Well, hey there, kiddos, and welcome to your video on the quadratic formula. Quadratic formula is just another method we can use to solve a quadratic. Instead of factoring, we can use quadratic formula. Quadratic formula comes in very, very handy when you have a parabola or a quadratic that when you graph it, it doesn't cross the x-axis at an exact point like this parabola right here. You can see it crosses the x-axis somewhere between 1 and 2, but we're not real sure. And it also crosses the x-axis somewhere between -3 and -4. But we don't know the exact number. And so quadratic formula comes in really handy when this kind of a situation arises. So this is what the quadratic formula looks like. And do not worry, this is not something you have to memorize. The quadratic formula it looks kind of overwhelming when you first see it. But if you break it up into little parts and you just start plugging things in, it's not so bad. And it will always be on your formula chart, so you don't have to memorize it. So it looks like this. X equals. It starts out with this way. It's the opposite of b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. And where this a, b, and c comes from here in the quadratic formula is from our standard form of a quadratic, which is ax squared plus bx plus c. So when you have a quadratic, your a, b, and c come from that form, and it's just those coefficients that are part of your formula. Now, in the quadratic formula, there is a special little piece. There's a special little piece to it right here that's underneath the square root symbol. It's this b squared minus 4ac. This is what we call the discriminant. And it's just a part of the quadratic formula. It's not separate from it. It's not something different. It's just part of the quadratic formula. And that little piece of the quadratic formula tells us how many solutions we have. So the discriminant, lost my pen, the b squared minus 4ac just tells us how many solutions we have. It doesn't tell us what those solutions are, but it tells us how many there will be. If there was going to be one solution, two solutions, or no real solutions, it will let us know that. And it's always underneath the radical, so it's under the square root symbol, which we also call a radical, but that's where it is. It's just that b squared minus 4ac, and we will use the discriminant to determine how many solutions there are. And then we will plug in and use our quadratic formula to find out what those solutions actually are. So here are some examples. So numbers 2, 3, and 4 right here, they want us to identify a, b, and c. So the first thing we're going to do is find out what a, b, and c are. Now you cannot solve for the quadratic formula or any quadratic for that matter unless it is equal to 0. So number 2 here already equals 0, so that's a good thing. A is the number in front of x squared, so it's the 2. B is in front of the x, which is 3, and c is the other number, which is -5. And so we're going to do the discriminant first because it says find the discriminant value. So we're going to do b squared minus 4ac. And we're just going to plug in what we know from our a, b, and c into this and then just find out what it equals. Well, b is 3, so I'm going to do 3 squared minus 4 times a, which is 2, times c, which is -5. And then I'm going to pick up my calculator and I'm going to type this in exactly like I wrote it. So I have 3 squared minus 4 times 2 times -5. And I get that this is equal to 49. Well, since my discriminant came out to be a positive number, since b squared minus 4ac is a positive number, then what that tells me is that I'm going to have 2 solutions. So if the discriminant is positive, I will have 2 solutions. And I'm going to write that up here. We didn't use this spot, so I'm going to write it. So b squared minus 4ac. If it's positive, I'm going to have 2 solutions. So when I solve this problem, I should get 2 numbers as my answer. So now I'm going to go back to my quadratic formula, this right here, and I'm going to plug in the rest of my values. I already know what this b squared minus 4ac part is, so that will be easy, but I still have to do the -b and the 2 times a. So I'm going to start with -b. Well, b is 3, so the opposite of that is -3, plus or minus the square root of the discriminant, which was 49, all over 2 times a, and a is 2. So now it's just a simplifying problem. So this becomes 7 because the square root of 49 is 7. So I have negative 3 plus or minus 7 all over 2 times 2, which is 4. So I have two different problems here. I have negative 3 plus 7 divided by 4, and I have negative 3 minus 7 divided by 4 because I have that plus minus in the middle. So it's not a 2, it's a 4. So I need to grab my calculator and find out what those equal. So I have negative 3 plus 7 divided by 4, which makes 1. So one of my answers to my problem is x equals 1. The other one, the negative 3 minus 7 divided by 4, is going to be a decimal, and it comes out to be x equals negative 2.5. So my two solutions to this quadratic are going to be the points 1, 0, and the point negative 2.50, because these 2 points will be where my quadratic crosses the x-axis. And you see I have two solutions just like my discriminant said. So now we're going to do number 3. It's a really bad line. So again, we're going to identify A, B, and C, but first this has to be equal to 0. I need it to equal 0. And I want to keep the x squared value positive, so I'm going to leave 2x squared here. What I'm going to do is subtract 7x and add 3 to cancel on this side. And so what I end up with is 2x squared minus 7x plus 3 is equal to 0. And so there's my quadratic I'm going to use. According to that, A is 2. B is negative 7, and C is 3. So first steps, I'm going to do the discriminant. So I'm going to do b squared minus 4ac. And in this case, b is negative, so I'm going to have to do negative 7 squared. Make sure you put it in parentheses, especially if you're going to use your calculator. If you don't, you'll get the wrong answer. So then you have minus 4 times a times c. I'm going to plug that in my calculator to find out what it equals. So I have negative 7 squared minus 4 times 2 times 3, which gives me 25. So now, again, I have a positive value for the discriminant, so I'm going to have two solutions again. So now I'm going to plug back into my quadratic formula. I'm going to find out what it equals. So in this case, I have to start with negative b. Well, b was already negative, so that means I'm going to do positive 7 because it's the opposite of b. You do the opposite of whatever it is, plus or minus the square root of the discriminant, which was 25, all over 2 times a, which is 2. And then we simplify. So I end up with 7 plus or minus 5 all over 4. So that gives me my two problems, 7 plus 5 divided by 4 and 7 minus 5 divided by 4. Well, 7 plus 5 makes 12. Divided by 4 gives me 3. So I have x is equal to 3. And this one, 7 minus 5 is 2. Divided by 4 gives me 1/2 or 0.5. So my two solutions are going to be at 3, 0 and at 0.5, 0. So before we go any further and do another example, I want to write down the rest of the things you need to know about the discriminant. So if it's positive, if you do b squared minus 4ac and you get a positive number, it means you have two solutions. If you do b squared minus 4ac and you get the number 0, it means you're going to only have one solution. And if you do b squared minus 4ac and you get a negative number, then it means you have no real solutions. So depending on what the determinant or the discriminant pops up as, positive makes two solutions because the positive looks like a T. 0 makes one solution because the 0 looks like an O. And a negative means no real solutions. That's the things that you need to know because it's going to ask you multiple times to find the discriminant first, determine how many solutions there are. And if there are real solutions, to go ahead and find them. So let's do two more examples. Actually, we're just going to do one more example. So we're going to skip down here to number 7, and we're going to have to solve this. So it tells us first to find the discriminant, describe the nature of the roots. That just means tell me how many there are. Are there 1, 2, or none? And then solve for any real solution. So if you get a positive number or 0, you will solve. If you get a negative number, you will just tell me there are no real solutions and be done. Well, first this needs to equal 0. So I'm going to have to add 3 to both sides. So then I'm going to get 4/3 n squared plus 4n plus 3 is equal to 0. Well, to make this easy on myself, I don't want to deal with a fraction as a coefficient. That's just not fun. We don't want to mess with it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply this whole thing by 3 so I can cancel out this denominator in this fraction and clear my fraction out. So this 3 will cancel out that 3. They'll cancel each other out, so I'll have 4n squared left. But then I have to do 3 times these two also. So this 3 times 4 makes 12n. And then the 3 times the 3 makes 9. And of course 3 times 0 is still 0. So here's my quadratic. I've cleared out the fraction. I don't have it left. And as long as I multiplied every single thing by 3, I'm okay. I haven't changed the function. So I'm going to label A, B, and C. A is 4. B is 12. And C is 9. So we're going to do discriminant first. So I'm going to do B squared minus 4AC. So I'm going to plug in what I know. So B is 12, so I've got 12 squared minus 4 times A times C. Now I'll grab my calculator. And what I do, I have 12 squared minus 4 times 9, which gives me 0. This tells me I'm only going to have one solution. So when I solve this problem, I will only get one answer. So now I'm going to go back to my quadratic formula, which you wrote down on the front side of your paper for the front side of your notes, and it always starts with the opposite of B. Well, B is 12, so the opposite of B is negative 12. Then I have plus or minus the square root of the discriminant, which was 0, all over 2 times A, which was 4. So square root of 0 is 0, so I end up with negative 12 plus or minus 0 all over 8. Now the reason there's only one solution here is because negative 12 plus 0 is the same thing as negative 12 minus 0. They give you the same answer. Whether you add 0 or subtract 0, nothing changes. So really what I have as my solution is negative 12 over 8, which is not a very nice number. So we're going to just simplify that fraction. I'll just go ahead and divide negative 12 divided by 8, which is comes out to a perfectly fine number, and I get that x is equal to negative 1.5. So my solution to this problem is at negative 1.5 comma 0. It's going to touch the x-axis here, and that is it. So that's your one solution. So that is the quadratic formula. We're going to practice this when you guys come to class tomorrow. I'll see you then.